This week's episode is in partnership with Intact Insurance, here for you and for everything you care about.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Jann Arden podcast. I am Jann Arden. Caitlin Green, who's normally with us, has left us. I don't know how long she's left us for, but she finally just said, I've had it with my condominium. I'm going to go do something fun. No, where did she go, Adam?
I think she's just taking a little vacation this weekend.
Is it a staycation? Because that would completely defeat the purpose.
No, I think she was going up north. I got a text from her. I'm pretty sure she went up north.
Up north. Does anyone ever go down south in Toronto?
I don't think so. It's always up north.
Okay.
Unless we're going to Buffalo or something for the weekend. But no, it's always up north.
Right. Well, it's exciting because it's not exciting that Caitlin's away, but I'm very glad that you're here, Adam, and working the control board, because I don't know how any of that stuff works. But I have an old friend of mine, and we haven't spoken for a long time, but I just called her up a few days ago because Terri Clark kept popping into my mind. Terri Clark just kept popping into my mind. I'd be walking down the road with the dog, and I'm like, I need to phone Terri Clark. And then I'd be, grabbing a few groceries, and I need to phone Terri Clark. And then I heard her in a drugstore that I went into about 3 days ago, and Girls Lie Too was playing quite loudly and clearly. And you know how you stop, and I'm like, is that the song? Because it's never loud enough to actually understand what you're hearing in a Shoppers Drug Mart. The music is there just to annoy you. I don't know, so I stood there and I'm like, yep, that's Terri Clark. That's it. I've got to phone her. So here we are. I'm like, will you do my podcast? She said, yes, I will, which I was so thrilled about. So welcome, Terri Clark, speaking to us from an unknown location in Southern Ontario.
Hi, Jann Arden. How are you?
I'm so good. Welcome to the podcast. I feel like we're getting caught up like in public because it's like a coffee date. We're on Zoom right now so we can see each other. You guys can't see us because, of course, we just use the audio on these. But you look great, Terri. You don't age. Like time stands still around you.
Well, thank you so much. That's a huge compliment, and I owe it all to my heroin habit. It really keeps me very, very young.
Your hair is super long. You've got super long COVID hair.
I do, actually. I haven't been to the hairdresser for so long. It's I've been getting those little root touch-up kits, that you do yourself. And then when I talk to my hairdresser on the phone, they tell me that that's like the worst thing to do. Never do your own hair. But I don't know if that's like a hair conspiracy, because they want you to go back to them sooner than later. But oh yeah, it's I'm not only getting gray now, like on the top, like a skunk. I look like Pepe Le Pew half the time, but it's coming in on the sides where my sideburn area would be if I were a male.
Why do men look more distinguished, Adam? Because I'm looking at you with like a gray and a dark beard, kind of very Cruella de Vil, only in a beard. And men look more distinguished and women just look older. Like, why don't we look cool with gray sideburns?
We don't have sideburns, Jan.
Well, what do they call? We do, but what do they call? Like our little side part.
I don't know what that would be called.
Well, for all accounts and purposes, we're going to call them sideburns. Anyway, you look fantastic. And I know that I'm speaking to you. You're in Canada right now. You live in Nashville for the most part, but you've had a place in Canada the last 13, 14 years. And what a godsend that must have been to you during all this.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like this is such an unprecedented time, and never in a million years could any of us have imagined that we would experience a pandemic. Okay, floods, and there are earthquakes, and there are fires, and there are terrible things that happen in the world. But this is almost like that bizarre dream that you're having, that you're wanting to wake up from at some point and go like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what I dreamed last night, that we were all in a pandemic. And, us artists and musicians, we didn't work for a year or more, could be the way things are going. But it's just, it is a godsend, because I always feel better when I'm home and going back to my roots and coming back to Canada. The minute I cross that border, there's a lightness. I just feel lighter. I can't really describe it. I feel safer and lighter, and I always have, even before the pandemic. So I think it's all about going back to your childhood and remembering a carefree time, and being around family and friends and people that matter to you. I think that this is a huge perspective check for so many of us.
Yeah.
And what really matters. And if we can't take the human suffering, the loss of income and livelihoods and life, and find some sort of ray of greater good or some sort of message for ourselves that we can learn something from it, then it's in vain. And I can't believe that this is all in vain. There's got to be something that we all individually can learn from it.
Well, for people like you and I who are in the music business, there's an incredible amount of traveling as a singer-songwriter or in a band. Obviously, you can't just sit at home and have 2,000 people come and sit in your backyard twice a week, as much as that would be really awesome. So for me, I don't know about you, Terri, but when it all kind of stopped, I came back from a gig in the Bahamas on the 7th of March, and I really have only left the house a few times since then, but I didn't realize how tired I was until we stopped. I mean, yeah, it was stressful, all of this, and you felt anxious, and I felt a bit blue and depressed. But on top of that was a profound fatigue from being on the road for the last 25, 28 years. So what was it like for you to pull the brakes up and go, yeah, all my work, like our work disappeared in 24 hours?
Mm-hmm. It was involuntary, and I don't know that I would have voluntarily taken this type of breath or this type of time. I love what I do. I love connecting with audiences. But again, like you were saying, for the last 25 years, I've done between 70 and 140 dates a year, nonstop. Haven't taken more than maybe 3 weeks at a time off.
Yeah.
And you just become conditioned and trained that's what I do. I'm a road dog. I just climb the bus. I show up at midnight, and then I get home on Sunday or Monday, and a lot of weekend stuff. And up in Canada, sometimes 6 to 8 weeks straight, as you know, in Canada, it's not like you can bebop home on the weekends or on Monday for a few days. It's a large geographic space to cover.
Betcha.
Yeah, you just keep going. So, I had to embrace it, Jan. I had to say, you know what? Instead of looking at it like, oh my God, I'm not making any money. How am I going to pay for this, that? How am I going to, my fans are going to forget about me. How do I stay, relevant? How do I'm not playing you tend to put some of your own value and self-worth in an audience's applause. It has been a real eye-opening experience. And I just had to embrace it at the end of the day and go, you know what? I'm going to take this in my own personal life, because it's creating it's so horrible for so many people right now that are losing houses and jobs and trying to get their businesses back on track and then stumbling again. It's just horrible. So, I feel so much pain for those people, but on a personal end for me, I'm trying to look at the bigger picture, and that maybe I just needed this and I wasn't going to do it for myself. So it sounds like you're the same way. So
you talk about, coming back up to Canada and sort of reconnecting with those childhood memories and stuff. And I just want to go back a bit in time, because your childhood seems pretty locked and loaded to me. It seems like you were a pretty happy kid, but you had lots going on. Obviously a divorce with parents. You spent a lot of time with your grandparents who were very musical. And I just want to know when the music bug hit you. And I know you've been asked this question a billion times, but I think we're all getting nostalgic as we're getting older. So you at some point set your sights on Nashville, and it was Nashville or bust, Nashville or bust. So how did that start for you, the music thing?
Well, my grandparents, and you met them, you know, they didn't live very far down the street in Calgary, and you used to pop over back in the 90s and we'd all visit. And, it started with them and my mom, and I came from a musical family. My mom used to sing me to sleep playing Buffy St. Marie and Bob Dylan and Joan Baez songs. And so I grew up with, my mom sitting on the edge of my bed with her guitar instead of reading me child bedtime stories from a book. That's what she did. When I was 9, when I was 9, I picked up the guitar and I used to spend time with my grandparents, and he was always playing fiddle and guitar, and they were always singing classic country songs. And so my parents being very young and restless and going through the divorce and everything, I ended up moving 7 times before I was in junior high school. And I could never really felt very settled as a child because we were always picking up and moving somewhere. And when we finally wound up out west after my parents divorced and my mom remarried, we wound up in Medicine Hat. And I just I walked into the living room. Of course
you did. Of course you did.
Of all places, from Montreal to Calgary, back to Montreal to Calgary again, and then to Medicine Hat. That was kind of the trajectory of how that, a lot of zigzagging. And when I wound up in Medicine Hat, finally just felt we had a house in a cul-de-sac, and it was my little Mayberry. And I finally my mom was able to stop working as a single mom, and I would walk home from school at lunch and she would make me sandwiches, and I started taking the guitar very seriously, and I'd sit with the guitar at lunch and at dinner when she was making dinner. And she was finally able to be like a mother like she wanted to be, the PTA mother, and taking the kids to brownies and CGIT and, being a part of our lives and in a way that she hadn't been able to be before. So because she was busy trying to make money to support us. And, I walked into the living room one night and I saw the Barbara Mandrell show on TV, and it was like
with the sisters, the Barbara Mandrell and her sisters, and they played every instrument under the sun. They had the freaking banjo, saxophone, piano, guitars. That was girl power at its finest for women like you and I, Terry, to see girls doing that. It was transformative.
Yeah, they were like the Dixie Chicks before the Dixie Chicks, or the Chick now, I should say.
They're called the Chicks. We've got Terry for the whole show, so stay with us. You're listening to the Jann Arden podcast. And I just want to say that Terri Clark, as far as I know, the last time I checked, is the only Canadian female country member of the Grand Ole Opry. Is that correct, Terry? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, you are.
And you've also been inducted into the Canadian Music Country Hall of Fame.
Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame, yes.
Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame. At the Grand Ole Opry, she was like just probably had her mind blown off. But Terry's with us for the whole show today. So you're in Medicine Hat playing guitar, and you must have had the bug, right?
Oh, absolutely. And by the time I was 14, I was starting to do a lot of local contests, talent shows, and things that they would play on the local chat TV station, and wound up at a provincial talent show called the Dick Dameron Cattle Country Jamboree, the Dick Dameron Cattle Country Jamboree in Brooks, Alberta. And
Brooks was so big for country music. It really
big
was.
Time. That was a big festival. And, I wound up there. I was 15 and every other contestant was well over 20 in their 30s. And I got first place in that. And that led me to a national competition in Edmonton, where I lost. And it was sponsored by the CCMA, and I lost the contest, and my mom and I were standing backstage, and they were reading off the winners, and they started at 3rd place and it wasn't me, and then they went to 2nd place and it wasn't me, and they went to 1st place and it wasn't me, and our hearts were broken because everybody in the contest was telling us we had it. They were like, Terry's, you've got it. We're going to go to dinner and celebrate. There's nobody that can touch you, and they were all just saying this.
Do you remember who won?
His name was Jerry Ness. I have no idea where he is. He was about 50.
Yeah, and where is he?
Right, and at that time, I thought, that old man won over
Screw
me.
you.
Old man. And now I'm over 50. But they had to disqualify me, and I didn't realize this, but I actually did win. But they had to disqualify me because Budweiser was sponsoring the talent show, and I was underage.
And you were too young.
Yeah, and I found that out 10 years later at the CCMAs when I was winning all the awards. The head of the CCMA, Tom Tompkins, said, I need to tell you something I don't think you're aware of. And I said, you could have told me that 10 years, because my mama cried all the way back to Medicine Hat. We were just devastated. And that's when she said, Terry, I'm going to take you to Nashville. She said, screw it, we're going to Nashville.
Your mom said that?
Yeah.
Your mom, who I got to meet many times, was your greatest cheerleader. She was your greatest fan. She was your mom, but she was your momager kind of. And she was, but she didn't do it in kind of like a Brooke Shields mother kind of creepy way. You know, she really understood music, and I think she really understood your talent. But she was tough on you too.
Yeah, she did. I consider her, she was sort of my coach, and I would sit with the guitar while she was making dinner, and she would tell me, she'd be like, you're pitchy here and you should soften up there and find more dynamic. She really helped me. And she was also my emotional support for so many years. We sat on the phone for hours and hours, and she was like a sister and a best friend and a mom all rolled into one, and a mentor. She was a mentor to me. And I just trusted her. I trusted her implicitly with everything. There's nobody on this planet that I can say I've ever trusted as much as I did my mom, to have my best interest at heart and to always have my back and look out for me above anything else. Because, the world is full of ulterior motives and opportunistic people, and you just don't know who to trust after a while. But I always had my mom. So, when she passed away in 2010, it was like losing a lot, not just a mom, but I lost a lot there. And
gosh, it's been 10 years. 10
it has.
years.
Yeah. Yeah. But
well,
you know what? I earned my adult stripes. It was time for me to fly and be on my own.
Yeah. Well, she prepared you well, and she was a great person. So you guys get to Nashville, and what was the end game? Like, we're going to go down there, we're going to do demos, we're going to knock on the doors on Music Row. What the hell were you going to do?
Well, I was so nervous crossing the border because I didn't at the time have a green card or any way of getting a job. So we had to really think on our feet about how I was going to find a place to live and pay for that place to live.
How old were you? 18 now?
18 years old from Medicine Hat. And it was culture shock. I mean, just the climate going from that Alberta, summer. I went from Alberta in May to Tennessee in May, and it was brutal, hot, humid. Anyway, my mom and her best friend, Pat, drove me down actually from Toronto. My mom flew out to Toronto. I had wound up in Toronto for a few months. It's a long story. So we actually left from there. And, I was afraid of not getting in, just almost as afraid as I've been about not getting back up to Canada with COVID going on. This is the second most afraid I've been about crossing the border.
You're reliving your past.
No kidding. In the other direction. We went to Nashville and started looking for a place for me to stay, found a room to rent, and just so happened that the woman renting the room in her condo also was looking for somebody to babysit her little boy who was 2 or 3, and she was working shift work. So she had to work in the middle of the night at a factory. So I agreed for a little bit of a reduced rent to watch Rory for her. And in the meantime, while we had secured that piece of the puzzle, my mom only had a week to stay because my brother Peter was only 5 in Medicine Hat, and she had to get back home to him.
And you guys just left him in the house alone with the tap dripping, right? What
Right.
a great story. Yeah, just a bag of food open on the floor and the tap dripping. But anyway, he survived. He's no worse for wear.
No, he's doing great.
I just can't believe it that at 18, like when I was 18, Terri, I was so naive. I couldn't have fathomed. I would have been too afraid to leave home at that age. I mean, I stuck pretty close to home until I was, until I got my record deal. That was like when I first started traveling, and I was 29 or 30. So what, you were just going to write songs now? You looked after Rory, and how did you end up at Tootsie's? Tootsie's is a bar downtown on the Strip, and it was backed across the alley from the original Grand Ole Opry, where Hank Williams, Patsy Cline, like all the greats came up through the 40s and 50s, 60s, 30s even. Hey, Terri?
Yeah.
And they would go across to Tootsie's and have a drink and then go back for their encore. There's some great stories. But if you go to Nashville, you have to go to Tootsie's. But Terri, you ended up singing there. We've got like 30 seconds. So I'm gonna leave this segment, and I'm gonna come back because I want to just hear how you ended up there, because it really was the beginning of this amazing journey that you've been on. We're going to be back. You're listening to the Jann Arden podcast. My very, very special guest is the one, the only, Terri Clark. And if you're jogging or driving your car or anything like that, we hope you're enjoying yourself. We hope you're enjoying the Terri Clark and Jann Arden podcast experience. Terri is about to tell us how she ended up at Tootsie's, which is the most epic, classic, country western, narrow, weird, dirty-looking pictures on every corner of the wall. Like you can go in there and get a beer for $1 on a Tuesday night and listen to, usually, almost always, on the tiniest stage the world has ever built, that is built into the front window of the bar. So when you're walking down the street, you're literally like one of those, I'm going to say, ladies of the night in Amsterdam that's selling her wares in the red light district, only you're playing guitar. So,
and everything's lavender.
And you literally have a hat there collecting tips and money, and you're singing to people drinking on a Monday afternoon. How'd that happen?
My mom and Pat, her friend, and I decided that before they left town to head out and left me there, we were going to do some of the tourist trap stuff. So we went to the Hall of Fame. We went to the Grand Ole Opry and saw an Opry show. And I said, I have to go to Tootsie's, because at that point as a teenager, I had read every autobiography there was and a lot of history and country music. And I knew my stuff. I wanted to be a kind of a bit of a historian and know what I was doing. So we walked into Tootsie's. It was empty. Now, in the late 80s, in 1987, when we walked in there, and for about 10 years before that, the place had been pretty much abandoned and forgotten. The whole street, it was ravaged with like a lot of drug deals and shootings and prostitution, a lot of peep shows, pawn shops, adult theaters. It was not what it is now. Now it's just, it's Mardi Gras.
Very contemporary.
Yeah.
Hundreds, if not thousands of tourists, very successful, very clean, very reclamated, as they say. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but when you walked in, it had seen its glory days.
It had, and it was really, I was so excited just to be at Tootsie's. I'm 18, I'm looking around and everything just looks like Disneyland to me, because I'd read about it in all the movie and all the books and seen it in movies like Coal Miner's Daughter. And I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm here. So my mom and Pat pushed me to ask the guy who was singing if I could sit in, and there's nobody in the place. It was just desolate. And so I got up and
the bartender, the waitress.
There was a bartender. I think the bartender was the waitress. She was doing both jobs. Kind of like a TV crew in Canada.
Yeah. Yeah.
One guy doing the interviewing and the camera operating. Yeah. Anyway, so she was. And I got up and started to sing. And as the afternoon progressed, the tip jar started to fill, because people started to fill the place, and they offered me a job singing for tips. By 4:00, we went in around 10 a.m. By 4:00, I had been sitting there all afternoon singing, and people were filling the place up, and the tip jar was filling up. And the guy who I sat in on his deal took all the money because it was his shift. And I'm like, well, damn, you're taking all the money.
Yeah.
And they offered me a job, and I took the job, and I had to figure out how I was going to get down there. I didn't have a driver's license in Tennessee. I didn't have a car. So I looked up the bus schedule, and from the place where I was,
Terri.
Oh, seriously, from the place where I was renting the room from the woman whose kid I was watching in the middle of the night, all the way downtown was about 10 miles with a guitar on a city bus, and stop after stop after stop after stop. It took me 2 hours to get there and 2 hours to get back. And walking down Lower Broadway, at 18 with a guitar, with a Martin guitar in my case and tied to my wrist with a shoestring. It was an interesting time. It was character building.
But wouldn't you say, like, we in the music business, we talk constantly about paying your dues, and it feels like what we see now, certainly in the last decade, we look at these models of how fame works in the music business. And a lot of it is to do with The Voice, American Idol, these contesting shows where in an 18-week cycle, people are plucked from obscurity. They sing in these shows. They're suddenly household names. They're given these deals that are terrible frickin' record deals. Mm-hmm. They're like these 360 deals where they basically take everything the kid makes. Mm-hmm. And they're launched onto this platform where they have absolutely no practical experience performing. You and I were cut from a cloth where by the time we've signed our record deals, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of performing experience. Do you still think that is an integral, important part of climbing up the ranks in music? Like, would you tell kids they've got to get to open mic nights? They've got to just write. They've got to get out there and earn their keep. Like, I have no regrets about that.
I feel like the hunger years and the years where you struggle and you don't know what's going to happen, but you're doing it anyway, and you're not doing it for money, you're doing it for the passion and love of it, are the best years of your career. I feel all of those years leading up to whether or not you have success, and hopefully you do, they really do build your character and they toughen you up. And I think that when you do, not everyone's going to be a fan. You're going to have critics. You're going to have people that pan everything you do or love everything you do. I just feel like it's a soul enriching climb and experience. And I know that you traveled in vans and played dirty bars a bunch before you got your deal.
For 10 years.
It's like training for the Olympics, okay? An Olympic athlete. I mean, it's your training years. And I think it makes you a better athlete when you get to that place, when you can go back and recall and remember. It makes you appreciate your success that much more because of what you had to go through to get it. Had
you had the opportunity to do a contest type show, the Terri that was 18, 19, coming to Nashville, sees a poster for The Voice, American Idol, Canadian Idol, whatever, would that have been something that would have interested you, or would you have, I don't know if the Jann back then, would have had any courage to take that on. And I wouldn't, it's not that I would be worried about failing or not making the cut, but I just don't think I had the personality yet to go be in a contest. But would you have done that?
Well, I entered a lot of local contests, so maybe I would have, but I watch those shows and I don't know how those kids get through it, like with every eye in America and Canada and wherever on them.
And so critical.
Oh, I think I'm too sensitive. I think I would have been too sensitive. And it's a character flaw. I'm very sensitive and I don't reveal that a lot.
Are you glad there was no social media?
Oh, thank God. Yeah. Thank God. But it's I don't know that I would have been pushed probably by people around me, and my mom, would probably have said, why don't you go try out for that? But God, honest to God, Jann, they're freaks of nature. They're so good. I don't know that I would have made the first damn audition cut. I don't know. I'm a stylist and I'm not a bad singer, but I don't consider myself the kind of singer that some of these people they're like doing vocal Olympics and acrobats all over the place. And they're just so good. It is the talent out there. And do you think that there's more talent now, or do you just think that there's more exposure to talent now?
I think there's just more exposure. But having said that, a lot of times when I see that contesting, I don't see people that have any sense of who they are or any sense of what their voice is. And I think when you are a singer-songwriter, you learn over a great period of time, like decades, of how to write for yourself. I feel like I've been writing songs for 45 years I've been writing songs. And I feel like I finally know how to write for myself. The key, the pitch, the notes, the phrasing. I don't know if you feel that way.
I think true artists do get better over time. And even it's been it can be a little frustrating to me because I feel, when I was 26, 27, 28 through 34, 35 were my heyday years when more people were paying attention. And I feel like I'm 10 times the artist, singer and songwriter and entertainer and guitar player than I was then. And, you start to, it can be a little bit frustrating because you still want people to pay as much attention because you're that much better. You feel better now, but they
Terri, don't. 2 words for you. Tanya Tucker.
Oh, yes.
So
you're correct.
We're just going to wrap up this segment, but when you think about, I think the best is yet to come, Terri, for you. I really do. And in a Renaissance way, in a way where people are absolutely very aware of music now. This COVID thing has brought the arts to the forefront of everything. But Tanya was considered, kicked to the curb, done, over, finished. Brandi Carlile, and a group of incredible people, lifted her out of, she always toured. Tanya has toured all over the place, but Anyway, Tanya Tucker, what an incredible record she just did. We're going to be back. You're listening to the Jann Arden podcast. I've got some fun things to talk to Terri about. The fabulous, unbelievably talented, and better than ever, Terri Clark. This has gone by so fast. I'm dreading it because there's so many things I want to ask you about. But we were talking about, paying our dues and just how unbelievably important it was to have those years of struggle and all the obstacles. It somehow has just made it so worthwhile. And to skip out on that, I think, Terri, is what younger people, they really miss out. How can you go on a stage and expect to entertain people without stories, without experience? That's why they send those kids out there, they send like 8 or 10 of them out there because they've only got 2 songs each.
Yeah. And, I think it helps with songwriting too, that struggle, it just strengthens your character in a way and gives you experiences to write about. I mean, what are you going to write about if you're like, what do you write about when you haven't lived, when you haven't been out there and struggled and been hungry and figured out how you're going to catch the bus home and you in the bars and playing to those rough crowds and traveling around in a van and how do you, I do think it enriches your songwriting and
of course,
your soul and your hunger for it. And then you get it. And then when you get your record deal and you finally find that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, you are terrified of losing it. It becomes like, oh my God, I gotta hold on to this. And I think that you and I were talking a bit. That's when the work
starts. That's right. When the work starts. It's not when you get your record deal. It is giddy up go. From the moment you sign that paper, because you're never what you did in the music business. You're what you're going to do.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, you can have a brand new record that you're promoting, and the day that you go into the radio station to talk about your new record that just came out, the goddamn DJ will say, "What's next, Terri Clark?"
And they still do. Yeah. So what's next? What's up next?
What is your, I want to hear about people that you met, like famous people that when you first started out that you met, that you were just like, holy crap, I'm meeting. Because I know you and your friends kind of with Reba but who did you meet like coming up?
The ones I looked up to so much that the first time I met like Winona and Ricky Skaggs and Barbara Mandrell and Reba, I mean, I think to this day, I still revert back to this 14-year-old who was in their fan club when I get around them and get just tongue-tied and goofy. And I'm just, it's kind of like when you're 50 and you run into that boy you had a crush on when you were 13, you turn 13 again, or you get around your friends that you used to hang out with. I just turned 13 again. I just go right back to it. So yeah, I got to tour with Reba twice. When I was working a day job, when I finally was legal to work in the States, I had a day job selling cowboy boots, and she walked in and I swear to God,
you must have just crapped.
I did. I peed myself a little bit.
Did you talk to her?
I did. And I told her I was trying to get a record deal and how much she meant to me and how I had been in her fan club and I was from Canada. I'm sure I was just like babbling like at the mouth. And she was very nice. And then when she left, I said to myself, the next time you meet that woman, you're going to be meeting her on a peer level, on a different level. You'll have a record deal and not a sales girl selling boots, which didn't make me any less of a person. But I wanted to meet her.
Happen?
And it did. And I wound up on tour with her. And she brought an 8x10 framed photograph of her little boy, Shelby, who was 2 at the time when she brought him into the boot store. I sold him his first pair of cowboy boots. She brought me a family photo of him in those cowboy boots that he signed and handed it to me. And I said, you remember? Because this was 4 or 5 years later. I said, you remember me? You remember I was the same girl in the boot store? She said, I'll never forget it. Of course I do. So she remembered that.
I'll never forget it.
I'll never forget it, Terri Clark.
She's a really great person. I mean, I have a Reba story too. My road manager, Chris Brunton, who he's been with me for 16 years. He has become friends with Reba because his friend Carolyn looked after Reba for many, many years, Carolyn Schnell. And so we were both in Vegas at the same time or something. And Chris is like, Carolyn wants to know if you and Reba like want to go for lunch with us. And so the four of us went for lunch at some place, and she was the nicest person. She was so normal. She had an iced tea. She was talking about, I wish I could eat that. I'll just get fat. But, you know,
she is. She's very genuine.
She was playing at Vegas with
Brooks and Dunn.
Yeah, Brooks and Dunn, and the show was so fantastic. But anyway, when we meet our heroes and they're actually nice people, it's pretty special. Your Reba was my Olivia Newton-John, but I didn't meet her until I was well into my 40s. And I had a crush on Olivia Newton-John when I was like 14. Like I just listened to her music so much, and Adam is nodding that he had a crush on Olivia Newton-John too. And you're kind of leery because you're like, are these going to be nice people? Olivia Newton-John is the nicest, kindest, humblest person. She's still one of my favorite voices to this day, her and Karen Carpenter. And I have Olivia Newton-John's email. I got a chance to sing a duet with Olivia Newton-John, fast forward. And so I understand your moments of this dream and reality crashing. And we were talking on one of the breaks about, I wish we could have really appreciated when all these things were happening to us, the awards and traveling the world and doing all these things when you're in it. But why do you think we can't? Why do you think we're just not really realizing what's happening?
I think some of it's just being shell shocked. I think you prepare for it, but you can't prepare for it enough. And then when it happens and everybody's all of a sudden looking at you and paying attention to you, and you've got people pulling at you to do this, that, and the other, you miss a lot. And there were things I got to do, like being on a TV show with Dick Van Dyke. I mean,
oh my Lord,
where I met Barbara Mandrell for the first time. And that is all a blur to me. The George Strait tour is a blur to me.
I remember you touring with George.
It was all so surreal. It just feels like you're in a bit of a dream, and it's foggy. And I find as I'm getting older, bits and pieces are starting to come back a little bit more. I'm remembering it better, but in the midst of it, it was 90 miles an hour and just go, 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 go. You didn't have time to really sit and let it soak in for very long before there was the next thing to do. So I think that's part of it. It was just pedal to the metal that entire time. And you were the same way, you know, during that period of time. And I talk to other artists who say it's all a blur. That we're all in the same boat. It's all a blur to a lot of us.
Well, people will say, what was it like being on this show? Or what was it like being on, you know, Letterman? Or what was it like being on Leno? And I'm just like, honestly, I can't remember. Mm-hmm. I remember little bits and pieces, but I don't remember a lot, Terry. I don't I see clips of, you know, walking up and being on the Junos or I don't remember it. I don't remember the outfit. I don't remember who did my hair. Like, I didn't have any help in the early days. I don't know about you, but I didn't have stylists or hairdressers or makeup people. When I went to the Junos, I just got myself ready in the hotel room. I remember borrowing clothes from my mom's closet to go. I didn't have any help, and that was at the height of it. Yeah. That was insensitive, good mother, yeah, all of that stuff. I had no help.
I remember doing the Junos with you when we did the Bruce Cockburn tribute. We did Wondering Where the Lions Are, and they lost my clothes on the flight up, and my outfit arrived like 5 minutes before we were supposed to do that.
What I wouldn't do to see that clip. I would love to see that clip again.
Oh, it's on YouTube somewhere. Yeah, I've seen it. So you can find it. You can find anything online now. You know?
Well,
even things you don't want to look at, you'll find, and you'll go like, "Oh God, I wish I hadn't found that."
Well, I want to leave with a little something fun. I think you've had an amazing career, Terry. Your mom would be so proud of you. Your dad would be so proud of you. Your grandparents are watching over you, and I'm glad you're safe and sound in Southern Ontario. Listen, here's a little story that I just want to get your opinion on. So, just recently in the news, the OPP, since this is an Ontario story, you know, we might as well ask you, rescued a woman from a camping trip that had gone sideways. She went with another girlfriend. They were going to canoe down a river together. They had their tents and stuff. Anyway, they had a giant frickin' fight. And the one girl left her friend and just, had a fight, marched off. And anyways, the OPP ended up having to go rescue. Is there any kind of fight that you could ever have with anyone that would leave you to just leave your friend stranded in the bush?
No.
Thoughts, please.
Friends don't leave friends stranded in the bush.
They're calling it a heated argument. And they received a report of a stranded person on the Spanish River. This happened June 21st.
Okay, I do want to say one thing. Could you see dudes doing this? Never in a million years would a guy do that to another guy.
Wouldn't they?
I can't.
Adam's shaking his head.
I don't think so. I think they would just duke it out and get a Band-Aid for their bloody lip and go on. I don't see dudes doing that. We're so dramatic sometimes.
This is what really gets me, Terri, that made me laugh like out loud. What a great way to finish the show. So they split the sheets, right? I'm leaving. Well, one woman got the canoe, obviously, but I think the woman that left ended up going down the river, get this, on an inflatable sleeping pad.
She MacGyvered it.
Not even an air mattress, an inflatable sleeping pad down a river. For one thing, at 11:30 at night, I would be so scared to even leave a fire pit. Anyway, I wish our show could go on and on, but Terri, if you and I ever go camping, I would never leave you, honey. I would never leave you, no matter what we fought about. Even if it was the last marshmallow.
That is a true friend, Jann.
Well, you are my friend, and this has been a great chance for Terri and I to reconnect. We probably haven't spoken in person for 2 or 3 years anyway. But we used to do much better about staying in touch. So from going forward, that ain't going to happen anymore. We need to see each other.
I think social media has just given people more permission to lose touch on a more personal level because you think you're keeping up with people. But my social media, I just show the best 3 seconds of my life every day, and that's about it. They don't want to see the rest.
I love you, Terri.
I love you too, Jann.
And thanks for coming on the show. We will talk to you very soon. Thanks for sharing your stories. Get out there, make some noise, people. And don't be afraid to fail, because Terri and I are excellent at it.
Ah, there you go.
Yes. You have been listening to the Jann Arden podcast. My very special guest, Terri Clark. Toodaloo-doo.